Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, for the objectives, it's like just the primary simple objective of each game category. So like starting off with target. Anyone have an idea what the most basic? Oh yeah,
Directing something at a specified area.
bingo.
Exactly. Yeah. Getting your object closer and getting it to exactly where you want it to be and closer than your opponents for sure. How about anyone for net and wall? Net and wall is a bit of a different one because there's two components to the objective. It's to get your object into your opponent's area and then make them returning it to your area, making it difficult for them. Anyone for striking and fielding? Okay, I'm giving it to you. Was there
to hit the object or to catch the hit object, right? Like striking would be to hit whatever the object is, and fielding would be to retrieve whatever the struck object was.
Yeah, exactly. So once you hit it, you want to score the run after it. And then when you're in the fielding, you want to prevent that run from happening. Yep. So that's awesome. Perfect. And then territory and invasion is very common. Like we all kind of understand that, but the main objective of that is to invade your opponent's area and score. So again, like it's kind of hard to understand, but you can make a lot of similarities between hockey and soccer. Like they're both invasion games. You're trying to get into someone else's area and score a goal. So yeah, so we'll just keep going with more on the TGfU model.
Yeah, that's perfect. And so really those game categories and understanding what the objective is kind of the main reason that TGfU was created. So TGfU, what is it? We keep saying the name, we have not addressed it yet. It is the Teaching Games for Understanding model. So the true definition of it states that our TGfU model, it's a learner-centered approach, and it addresses the concerns with the transfer of learning across games, within the same game category and across between other game categories. So what they found, and what we found was that our participants really didn't understand those core objectives of the games, and they weren't able to take how they played one game and take those strategies and use them in another game. So that's really what we're trying to fix, or not really fix, but encourage. So the whole idea of it is that it provides learners with an understanding of the tactical and technical skills necessary to be successful across a wide variety of games. And when they're successful in the games like that, it actually provides them with more motivation to continue to participate. And the way that it's done through this model is through small-sided mini games, which is what's really fun about it, is that it doesn't follow a skill drill approach. Everything is done through small-sided mini games. So our small-sided games are things where instead of, say, splitting a big group into 2 teams, we maybe have like smaller teams, like, teams of 4, teams of 5, and that allows our players to be more active and to be more active learners as well in their gameplay. So what we found was that understanding how the game is played improves performance despite skill level, which is what's really great about this, is because skill level doesn't really matter right away. And you can split your groups up based on skill level if you need to, since you're using small-sided games. So pretty much, to sum that up, our TGfU, we teach the why before we teach the how, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as you can see in the slide here, the traditional model of games, starts with skills, and this kind of alludes to what Megan was saying, that this was more inclusive because you don't need to be super skilled to be playing this game. As you can see from the TGfU model there, it is learner-centered. It's more of a cyclic model where we're continually learning, we're continually doing different parts of the learning form. So I guess like what I'm saying is I'm going to assume that most of you have probably learned through your phys ed years and teaching that you would use the traditional model. So say when you're playing volleyball, you would start with skills, the participants would line up and practice setting or serving, and then they would play a game where skills are assessed and addressed. But finally, after like much time, many of the participants would be, at the end, would be challenged with decision-making and tactical recognition. So you can see that this traditional model focuses on the how. It's a skill drill approach outside of the context of a game. So no game also means no fun. So then we'll move on to the awareness of technical strategies at the end. But often I find that you've almost lost the engagement and the fun at that point. So where the TGfU model is very beneficial is it teaches the why before the how through a series of mini games, and those boring drills are kind of left for the end. So the participants are able to understand and become aware of the tactics and strategies involved in a game. So again, like I said, going back to the model, it's a circular model with consistent and active learning where the participant is in the middle. They're centered in their interaction, and it does contain all components of the traditional model, but just in a different order, and we add in appreciation of the game.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love this model. I just think the mini games are so much fun. It's really great because especially in different things like after school programs and summer camps, you all might be working with a really wide range in age. So it's nice that you can kind of group them off and be like, hey, if you want to be more competitive today, go in these groups. If you want to be less competitive today, go into these groups. So it takes a lot of the pressure off of learning and playing games. So let's dive into what these stages of the model look like, what they mean, everything wonderful. So what we always start off with the model is something called game or game form. And pretty much this is where our learners start to foster an understanding of the game. So pretty much it's a warm-up game. We start with a warm-up game that still is linked and still relates to whatever we're playing for the day, right? It's not a completely random game, throwaway game. We still want it to link and make sense. So typically what this looks like is it's a really highly modified version of the formal game that we're going to play. Like, so say we're playing soccer today, it's going to be some sort of highly modified version of it, maybe some sort of passing game, stuff like that. Still a specific objective. And this is where maybe our participants might start to understand some concepts, some skills, all of that stuff. So you start with game. After that, you move to game appreciation. And so this is different, even though I know it kind of sounds the same. But game appreciation is where we start to make modifications to the rules, the skills, and the strategies. And this is when our participants start to understand how all of those influence each other. So it's making really specific modifications based on what you want to work on and what you want to address. So an example of this would be, let's say you guys are playing badminton with your participants, and you decide to change the borders, the boundaries of the badminton court. And you're like, we're going to play on a really long and really narrow court. And then you're going to play on a really short and really wide court. And so it's getting them through that. Your participants will start to understand, okay, long shots, drop shots, the different areas of the court, how I can use it. So really specific modifications. After that, you can kind of start moving into your tactical awareness stage. And this is similar. And it's through our game-like scenarios that we start to introduce offensive and defensive tactics. So we start to understand, okay, this is how we gain an advantage. So it's playing games, for example, if you're doing a striking fielding session, doing baseball or kickball, it's understanding that batting your ball behind a base runner in baseball will typically increase your chances of advancing a runner. So it's playing games and having those conversations with the participants where they start to gain that understanding of tactical awareness.
Okay, and going on into decision making, so kind of building off what Megan said there, this component of the model is where the participants will start to focus on what to do and how to do it, as opposed to not just the specific skill of doing it. So let's say going back to the badminton example, the participants will start to learn from these modifications and their awareness of the tactics of each game category, that they'll understand how to make decisions so that they're successful. So in the badminton example, they'll understand to move the birdie away from where their opponents are on the floor and how to do that, as opposed to just not the specific skills of actually hitting the birdie. They'll understand where to make decisions to be more successful. And then we will, then after that decision-making component, that's when we are able to bring in some skill stuff. So when we were able to go in and say, you now have some context to develop these skills, or like we've given them a bit of context now to develop their skills. So then we can go in and perform the skills that they need to make the decisions that they've already understood. So when they're learning to the actual skill of hitting the birdie over the net, they'll understand that the placement of it is a tactical component of the game, and then they'll just learn the skills to do that after. And so then when we move into the performance, they're all performance of their decision, their awareness, and their skill. That's where they apply these previous steps in an advanced form of the game. This is where we continue the modifications, and maybe at this performance stage, we bring in a typical badminton game. And it's in this performance stage that we, all of us as instructors, are a big component of it, where we play a major role here. So it's where we are, we'll kind of show you a little bit about that in a bit, but how we ask open-ended questions to make them aware of the tactical decisions and the understandings that they've made. And I guess we'll just say that it's important to note that you may not go through, and you probably won't go through all 6 stages in one class or one session. And typically each of these stages are stretched over multiple sessions, and it may be possible to do all 6 if you have a long time block or a long day or part of a camp or anything, but it's all right if you don't. So each stage is a bunch of mini games, and to be honest, they won't even really recognize the model themselves. They'll just be taking little parts of understanding and little parts of tactics, and then changing them through all these different mini games for the whole process to happen over time.
Yeah, and that's awesome. You're pretty much tricking your participants into learning. They have no idea that they're learning because it's all mini games and it's so much fun. So the model can be a lot. It's a lot of information, and it's a lot of points and a lot of stages to get down and to recognize. But pretty much you're working your way in mini games, kind of increasing the complexity of them until you reach your full, true, regular game of whatever you're playing. Okay, so principles. These principles, they seem complicated, but these are actually some just like really nice things to keep in mind for when you're trying to think of, oh, how can I modify a game to pick out certain tactics and stuff. So these 4 principles are really helpful when using TGfU sessions in your game sessions. So the first one is sampling. Sampling pretty much is when we're doing TGfU, play as many games within a game category as you can. Sample so many games, all of the games, play them all. Because the more games you play, the more your participants start to go, oh, okay, I do see how I can use my tactics from my bowling session and use that in bocce and use that in golf, you know. They start to make more connections when you play more games. Next would be something called modification through representation. So it's modifying your game so it still represents your true form of the sport, but kind of like a watered down version of it. So if you're playing a basketball session, for example, it would be maybe taking the dribbling out of it, because you might have some participants who are really struggling with that and that's all they're focusing on. Water it down. Make it so it still represents basketball, but they're not so focused on the dribbling, and they can learn the different strategies of how to gain advantages. Our next would be modification through exaggeration. So this is kind of like that badminton example. It's taking a part of the game and it's exaggerating that element of it to really get the point across of how strategies work. So that would be the badminton one of just exaggerating the court, making it funny. So narrow, so long, so wide, so short, all of that stuff. And then finally, our tactical complexity. And I'm sure you all do this anyways. It's moving from our simplest game to our most tactically complex game, right? Obviously, we don't want to come in first game and just like throw them into the hardest thing we know how to do, right? We want to work our way up, start with simple, gain the confidence, the motivation, and get, a little tougher as we go. So the wonderful thing is that you can make modifications to anything in a game. Any sport you're playing, you can modify the rules, the boundaries, the equipment, the number of players, anything you want, that you think will help, go for it. And you're going to find some things work really well and some things don't. And that's just the way it goes. But the really great thing, I always enjoy making modifications to equipment, but in terms of allowing your participants to choose the equipment that they want to use. Because what this does is this gives your participants autonomy in their play. And when they have autonomy in their play, they're more motivated to play. They get more into it. And it can help with the pressure as well. Like say for a volleyball example, if you're going to play a volleyball session with your kids, say, hey, you can split up into whatever teams you want. And now you can choose between using a volleyball or a beach ball, or if you really want to challenge, use a tennis ball kind of thing, right? And then they can switch it out whenever they want, but they have that choice in choosing equipment that they know that they'll succeed with.
Sorry,
Darcy,
Megan, before you go on there, I just want to point out too that Krista made another really good point that not only does them having the opportunity to choose their equipment benefit them, but it can also benefit us as leaders if you don't have access to typical equipment or typical space. So, you know what, like that's actually like another really good point that in these programs we're doing and in these different times, we may only have access to beach balls and the volleyballs might be put away, but you can still be teaching the components of that game.
totally agree. It's so great. You can play any game with almost anything and it'll make it fun and they'll still have fun with it. Okay, so our debate of ideas is one more thing. And so this really comes in when we're talking about our tactical awareness and our decision-making stages. And it's also a good idea to throw it into the performance stage as well when you're playing your full regular game. So pretty much the debate of ideas is encouraging our learners to think critically about gameplay. And it's really essential to learning and teaching games. So it's something that we do called play, practice, play. So you'll bring a modification in. And let's say that we're doing, well, let's say we're playing soccer. We're playing a soccer session and we're going to do our first modification, be like, you guys have to dribble every time you touch the ball. You got to dribble 5 times before you can pass. Play like that for a bit. And then you bring them in and you ask some open-ended questions about the gameplay and the gameplay situation. So we don't want to ask yes or no questions just because then it doesn't, offer much of a conversation. We want to ask them questions like, okay, when did you find dribbling useful? When was it actually harmful to your gameplay? All this stuff. And you try to get them to come up with solutions as well. And it's not long. You pull them aside for a couple minutes, have them come up with solutions, and you go, okay, go play again. Go practice again, put your solutions into use. And you want to really especially make sure that they're focusing not on skill, right? You don't want them to be like, oh, well, that person didn't pass properly. You want to, okay, what are our tactical things? How could we gain an advantage? And then, so say, let's say you got to dribble all the time. You have your talk, you're good. And then you say, okay, team, we're going to do it where you can't dribble at all now. You have to just pass the ball immediately. And then you have them play like that. You bring them in and be like, okay, how did you find that? When was it useful? When was it not? What did you do? And you can pull out certain times from the exact gameplay. So make sure you're watching their gameplay too, and try to pinpoint certain moments where you're like, ooh, I noticed this happen, because then they'll remember it as well. They'll go, oh yeah, I did notice that when I was playing. I did see that happen. And so it's moments like those where, say, with the dribbling and not dribbling, they're gonna find, okay, you know what? Dribbling was really good in offense, the worst in defense. I wanted to get the ball out of there when I was in a defensive position, so I didn't really like dribbling, but I really liked the passing right away when I was in defense, but not so much in offense, And that's where you start to have them realize those different strategies and how your tactics can change. All right. Do we have
Okay.
any questions so far?
Yeah, that's a good.
Okay, I know it's a lot of information we're throwing.
Well, and it's a shame that we can't be together to play these
Yeah.
games with you all and kind of show you how we would be learning and understanding and, through some of those questioning, but we're doing our best. So I'm just going to walk you through a quick example of a volleyball game, and this is how we would take like a volleyball type net wall game and walk it through the 6 components of the TGfU model. So if for the game component, let's say we would start with a game called Keep It Up. and there would be no net. You could have two opponents on either, or four people all together on the floor, and all you're doing is you're just passing back and forth to keep the ball up for as long as you can. There's no limit on touches. There's no specific way that they have to hit the ball. They don't have to even hit a volleyball. It can be a beach ball or a roll of socks. Like, so that's the first part of the game. That's the game model of a volleyball. And then, so after we played that for a bit, we would move into game appreciation, where we would keep playing the keep it up game, but we would make some little modifications. So we would maybe change the size of the court, long or wide, etc. And then through that we would move into the tactical awareness, where we would be involved with them as leaders, and we would be addressing tactical awareness through that modification of volleyball that they would be playing. So we would go around and ask them questions throughout, and ask them how it was different for them to play when the court was long, and how did they pass differently when the court was wide, and what types of passes were they more successful with, a bump or a set, etc. And then we would still have no points or anything, and then we would maybe make a little bit of a change, like the number of touches that each team could have, etc. So then into decision making, this is where we kind of develop on that tactical awareness and let them think critically. Is that we would put markers on the floor, and then they could say, we could ask them to, like, the markers would be in key areas where they could aim in a game scenario. So like in the back corners or in open areas. And then we would ask them to, or we would encourage them to hit to those areas. And then if they were successful in getting it to those markers, that's when they would score a point. And so I hope you can see how we're kind of developing all the tactics of it in a gradual and a broken up way. And so if they hit those markers, they receive a point. And then once they've played that for a little bit, we can go in and work on the specific skills of getting the ball to the markers. And we could give them the opportunity to, some groups can set, some can bite, or some can bump, and some can even see if they are successful at hitting the markers with a spike. So, and then the partnerships will actually help each other. They'll be talking and they'll be providing feedback to one another on what does and what doesn't work. And then finally, we will put it all together into a full volleyball game, but we would still only keep like 4 aside. We would still kind of keep it just a little bit different, give them some more space, maybe keep it as a beach ball if they're not being as successful with a typical volleyball. And yeah, so what I would like to just mention real quick is, and we'll be sharing with you at the end, some resources, but this keep it up, like a bit of a modification to volleyball, is part of a play sport free resource. But in addition to that, Megan has built an amazing resource that we'll be sharing with you, with a bunch of game examples of each of the components as well. So we'll plop that into the chat at the end as well, but watch for that. So, but now we're going to do some games ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, resources come in. So this volleyball session will actually be in the resource package as well. I think it has some components to TGfU, and then one full game session under each game category. One full TGfU session under each game category as well, for you guys to use at your leisure. All right, so best way to learn TGfU is play TGfU. So we're gonna do a target game session right here today over Zoom. I think it'll be great. So I'm going to give you all some time. Now, I want you to find 5 objects that are going to be your pins. And these pins should be something that are okay with being knocked over, would not use glass or anything breakable. Something light, something you can knock over. So 5 of those, and 1 object that you can throw at your pins to knock over. Could be balled up socks, could be, I've got a squishy dice thing, anything.
I've got a toothbrush and some salad dressing.
I know, I'm like, oh, deodorant, lotion, and a pencil sharpener.
All right. And if you guys want to turn your cameras on, it might make it a lot more fun so we can see what you're up to.
In this session, although we're doing it virtually, I know that a lot of camps are running in person this summer, and hopefully we'll keep running in person. So I think this session would also work really well in person as well. Give you all a couple minutes. Okay, so actually, sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I realize I don't really need to for this one. Okay, perfect. So, feeling good? We have objects? Okay, so our first game, this is going to be, do you all remember that Angry Birds game? That used to be a really big thing. I don't know how long ago it was. So we're going to be pretty much playing Angry Birds, but with our objects. So this is going to be our game. So this is going to be the first stage of the TGfU model. So for Angry Birds, what I want you guys to do is I want you to pick one object that's going to be your bird. And you're going to set up your objects in any formation you want, but you have to place your bird somewhere in the middle of it. So, for example, I don't know if you guys will be able to see. Oh, I'm all connected to wires. I have all my objects set up, and I have my bird right in the middle, making it tough for myself. So, first thing you gotta do for the first game, you have to try to knock down all your objects without knocking down your bird. Okay? You can use any type of throw you want. You can be as close as you want, as far away as you want, all the stuff. You have to get all the objects down except for your bird that's sitting in the middle. He's got to stay protected. And if you knock the bird over, you have to set them up again and retry. Has anyone had any success with it yet? Yeah, I know it's hard. Okay, so for example, if we were doing that in person, what you could do is you could have your players split up into partners and be like, oh, you'll leave the does not work, yeah. You could split them into partners and you could have maybe partners place like one object at a time. Like first person will place one object, next person will stack it, next person will choose where the bird goes, you know, and that kind of thing. And they could take turns throwing. So that would be, say, the first one, our game stage of TGfU. Next, we're like, okay, we're moving into game appreciation. So that means Angry Birds, go with modifications. So now I want you guys to go as far away from your objects as you possibly can, and you'll have to throw from as far away as possible as your room limits allow. And then it'll be the same thing, trying to knock it down, but trying to protect the bird.
Peeking to see what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I know, eh? It's so hard. Easy to hit from far away. Interesting. What kind of throws did you find were easiest for far away? Do you kind of like use underhand, or sorry, overhand, underhand? Objects are too small. I did the same thing. Yeah.
Well, I had a ping pong ball, so I did an overhand throw, but I bounced it onto my desk and then it flew back up.
Smart.
So it it helped.
Yeah, no kidding. How did you find, did you have to use more power with it since you were far away, less power, anything like that?
More power.
More power for that one? Okay, so we're gonna change this up now. And you're going to go as close as you possibly can, like maybe one step away at most, and see how this goes. All right, how did we find that one? Do we like far away better or closer better?
Closer for me.
Closer for you?
Me too.
Yeah. Better accuracy when closer, yeah. Did you guys have to change your throwing style at all?
Yeah, I have this setup, so I probably didn't pick the best items or setup, but I have these little pegs, so I just like pushed.
Oh, oh, that's smart. Nice.
I was more successful with the heavier ball of the two balls that I had.
Mm-hmm. Now that you guys have played for a little bit, would you change any of your objects out if you could, now that you know what's happening in the game? Okay. I will give you time now if you want to switch anything out. You have 1 minute. Oh, Darcy, I think that's cheating. But no.
See, I think I'm going to be more successful with the largest ball.
Great.
Turn it
So-
off because it's going to be loud.
Yeah, and so this right here is us being in the tactical awareness stage as well. So the game appreciation and tactical awareness, you can kind of blend together. So we have the Angry Birds with modifications, and then you bring in the tactical awareness by me asking you guys questions after each one. And then you always like say, okay, now keep these in mind as we play the next session. So now we'll do it where you can move distance for any shots you want. You can do upper or overhand, underhand, any type of throw with your new objects, any distance you want to be that you think you'll be most successful at, okay? I like that comment a lot, Jessica. And I feel like that's definitely how a lot of people feel. You finish very quickly when choosing your own distance, but you didn't find it as challenging or fulfilling. And so that's where we always have to find that fine line with TGfU, right? Where we want to choose stuff that challenges you, and then we want to have you have success with it, and then challenge you again. And that's totally it. And that's where you start to, through the conversations and everything, you're like, okay, now I know what distance I like best. Now I know what throwing technique I like best. I'm going to see how this goes. And like you said, so much faster because you started to understand how to use those strategies. And that's when we know we got to move on to the next thing, right? And we got to step it up to keep everyone interested.
I changed
Yes,
my bird. Oh,
Sorry, one other real quick thing is that we all have different levels of throwing balls in our homes, but we all were able to learn our own techniques and different tactics as we were playing. So I think it's just a real reminder to the groups that you're working with could be a very diverse skill level, but we were all successful in our own way, all showing up here today with different equipment and different actual physical skills in this activity, but we were all able to have fun with it at those different levels.
Exactly.
I was
Sorry,
just going to
Krista.
point out that I made my bird a lot heavier than my other ones. And then I was like, well, this is boring.
Yeah.
It like hit the middle and then bounced around. And yeah, so it's fun to like be able to choose. And then okay, like I don't like that. I like the other one better. And then you can choose to challenge, right? So it's like a challenge by choice kind of situation.
Totally challenge by choice. And that's what's so great about TGfU. And that's a great thing with the equipment too, is if you have your participants choosing their equipment, I'd recommend letting them know you can change out the equipment at any time, because they're going to try one thing and maybe love it. They might try another thing, be like, don't like it as much, want to switch back. So always give them the option to change out whenever. Okay. I also should have prefaced this session by saying this is a buzzer beater bowling TGfU session, which is also in the package you'll be getting. So we're working our way up to a buzzer beater bowling performance round. So now we're going to move on to our decision making. And this is when we're getting a little bit closer to our full performance. So now we're going to move on to some good old bowling. With our same pin, same throwing object, what I want you all to do is to place your objects in a straight line. I'd say probably on the ground is best if you can, because then we'll be rolling it, but do whatever your space allows you to do. If it's up off the ground, that is a-okay too.
I'm doing some tabletop bowling today.
Yep, totally.
Me too, Darcy.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Do what works for your space. All right. With this one, once you have everything set up, is it possible for everyone to be 2 to 3 steps, put in quotation marks, steps away from their objects? Does everyone have that kind of space in their area?
Just 2 to 3 chair pushes away.
Yeah, exactly.
If I keep it on a bit. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So if you're doing this session in person, you could first start off the bowling by having people in partners and taking turns rolling towards it. But since I see that we are all a pretty advanced group for our throwing and rolling skills, we're going to start to add a little bit of competition now into it because I think you guys like a challenge. So we're going to go with it. So we're all going to be that 2 to 3 steps, chair pushes, whatever away. First person to knock down all their pins wins. And so you're gonna roll, knock them all down. When you've knocked them all down, you're gonna come back to the screen, put a reaction button on your screen, and that's how we'll know, okay? Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, we got one already. Oh. Love it. We got some good bowlers. Keep going if you haven't finished yet. Oh, I'm actually kind of out of breath from that, and I don't know if that's a bad thing.
Mine are all little rubber things, so they all like get stuck on the counter and it doesn't move to topple you.
Right. This is where I really hate my choice of object to throw because it has corners. So I try to roll it and it would just ricochet off everywhere. So, how'd that go?
That was
Good?
harder than I thought.
It was harder than you thought, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything that you used from like the past couple games that you used in this game in your tactics? Maybe, maybe not.
I was more successful with underhand in the previous games, so I used an underhand throw in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger ball.
Yes. That's perfect. And so that's really what it is. It's encouraging them to then think about that, be like, okay, what could you maybe from those past couple games that would work well in a game like this? And then we would go back and try again. So we'll try one more time, okay? I'm sweaty. I know. I'm sweaty too. Okay, so we'll set up our pins again. Keep in mind the past couple games we played and kind of what you found success in, and try to use that to your advantage. Oh, yeah, nope, that sounds great. If you need to hop out, that is no worries at all. Thank you so much for joining.
I did put the resource link in the chat box, but I can put it there again for anybody who needs to take off.
Oh, yes, that'd be great. Thank you, Krista.
Of course, just in case. Oh, perfect.
All right. Okay, does everyone have their pins set up? Feeling good? Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Perfect. Sweet. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely found, I kind of forgot that in the first games. I found it better when I was aiming at like the top of the object, so I started to do it that game, and I had way better success with it personally.
I moved so I could like try and get the back ones first, so the rubber wouldn't start kind of so I could try and yeah, get the back ones down before the front ones.
Oh, of course.
So I have to ask, when we were playing those games there, did anyone think of how that could be like curling or bocce or even golf? Like, did it kind of trigger with you how those games fall into that category and some of those different modes of delivery or tactics that we use could go all over that group of games? That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, that is perfect. And I always found too, the biggest surprise was when you realize games from other categories, you like can use those strategies in other games where, you know, I'm playing a net wall game and I'm going, oh, I'm actually using strategies from my target games and I'm doing striking fielding or territory invasion. I'm like, oh, actually that reminded me of this net wall game. That reminded me of this game. And that's when you really start to notice the difference. Oh, we have 5 minutes. Okay, perfect. We can play our final round. I'm gonna skip the skill execution. So we're gonna move into our final performance, which is buzzer beater bowling. In buzzer beater bowling, I don't know if you've played it before. It's really fun. It's pretty much bowling with a time limit. It's like you're trying to beat the clock. And so the way it is that we're gonna set our pins up. We're gonna try to we'll try to make it as fair as possible, being that 2 to 3 lengths away again, just so that it's all kind of even. And it's going to be whoever can get the most number of pins down in, well, you guys are doing it pretty quick. I'm gonna say 15 seconds. Make it really fast. So it's not even so much as get all the pins down, it's just as many as you can get down in 15 seconds. Okay, I gotta set mine up again. All right, we set up. We're a correct distance away. We're feeling good. We're feeling ready. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. And done. How do we do? Janelle, did you get all of them down? Oh my gosh. I'm gonna be honest, I panicked and I got maybe one down.
I think ping pong balls are my friend.
Yeah, the time limit got to me. But that's kind of the idea of how you could run, say, target session. And obviously this one was a very short time limit one. We really got a lot in, but you can really expand it out and add even more games kind of thing, if that makes sense. How did everyone find that? Good, awesome, love it. Beautiful. So yeah, Krista threw in the resource again. The resource, take it, download it, print it off. It'll have a few sessions in there. And really the biggest thing with TGfU when building your own sessions is some of them aren't gonna work. And that is totally okay. And you're gonna play a game and sometimes you'll be like, oh, this is awesome. And other times you're like, oh, no, 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 this is not going how I thought it would go. And that's okay. It's okay if a session doesn't go properly, because then you know for next time. And you learn why it didn't work. And it totally depends on your group too. And you get to know your group more and see what they like. And it's finding success in your own sessions, really, for building them.
And with your participants being so involved, it'll be very clear what works and what doesn't work, right? Like do you know what I mean? Like that kind of communication and that ongoing interaction with them, you'll know what's working and you can just kind of ride that out throughout your session and pick up there next time and or just move along. Like it's a very fluid type of model.
Yeah. So that is all that we have for you today. Thank you all so much for joining us in our session. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. As well, here, we'll throw our emails into the chat box as well in case you want to reach out, you have more questions, anything like that. Oh, that's the wrong email. There's a lot of really great websites as well out there for TGfU sessions. It's something that's really gaining a lot of traction, which is really exciting. And you can look up bowl sessions, which is really great if you're looking for ideas. Yeah.
Some of the best ones that we've used are in the back of that resource, the websites to go to, like Play Sport and that. So there's lots.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful summer, have a wonderful time, and you have a lot of fun with TGfU, as much fun as we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan and Darcy.
Thank you.